We noted a little bit earlier that we are broadcasting today from our Washington bureau because we are all this afternoon and this morning going to be paying our respects to Tim Russert. Since we're doing the show live from the newsroom today, we also want to tell you that we're in the same studio where Tim did meet the press for all these years. It's set as just across from us, and I would imagine we all came separately this morning, but I imagine we all had the same thought as we turned in from Nebraska Avenue into the driveway of our bureau. There was just a lot of flowers that had been laid by the NBC sign, by passers-by, people who just didn't even know Tim but watched him and were fans of his, and it was really moving.
Yeah, I mean, I felt such sadness but also such joy to have had him in our lives. I mean, what a great man and what a tribute. You know, and from all over the country, people came yesterday to his wake.
That's right. And the fact is, so many people, just average, everyday people, because this was a guy who never forgot who he was. We always talked about our dads and how we were so surprised at how far we had come. Big Russ was the love of his life, as was Luke, and you know, it showed.
Yeah. We were standing there and talking to Luke and Maureen yesterday at the wake. They started at 2 o'clock greeting people, and that line went on until late in the evening.
Well, you know what? I spent a lot of time here at the Bureau, and so I got to the wake in the last hours, about 7:30 I think I got there, and Luke was still standing there.
He wanted
one
to greet every
by
person.
one. And look at the people who've come. We're not looking at, you know, the rich and famous. These are average Americans who were touched by Tim Russert's work. I mean, this is why we're talking about him. He's not just a loss to NBC. He's a loss to our country.
And Luke said, and I think Maureen said as well, that he would have been surprised by this.
Shocked by it all. The President and the First Lady were there, and I just wanted to show you something really nice, and we all appreciate this. This is on the back page of the first section of the New York Times. It's a full-page tribute to Tim Russert, and it's by our friends at CBS News. So it's an awfully nice thing. I think, there we go. Get that up. And again, Tim will be laid to rest a little later this morning.
And it's a beautiful day here in Washington.
Yes, really nice. We're back in a moment. This is Today on NBC. They grew up in very different circumstances, but both shared a passion for politics. Tim Russert and Maria Shriver. Maria was a correspondent for many years here at NBC and worked very closely with Tim, and they became very close friends. Hi, Maria. Nice to see you. It's good to have you here. Talk about that. I mean, you were colleagues, but how did this friendship develop?
Well, I'm going to say when I speak today at the memorial that when I first came to NBC, I had just been fired by CBS. So I came not knowing really anybody, and Tim came up, put his arm around me and said, look, we're both Irish Catholics. We're both educated by the nuns and the Jesuits. There aren't that many of us in this business, so if we stick together, we'll be fine. And Tim wasn't on the air at the time. He was the vice president of news, so his whole kind of position at NBC was to kind of, you know, traffic in information, find young talent, nurture them, and that's what he was really great at doing.
Yeah, and over the last few days, we've heard a lot of people who work in this business, whether it's here at NBC or elsewhere, talk about what Tim meant to them professionally. How did he shape your career?
Well, he was instrumental, I think, in nurturing my career and encouraging me in my career and talking to the bosses, telling them that I was good, that I was talented, and, you know, he was a cheerleader, and I think that he was a cheerleader on behalf of everybody. Anybody could be sitting here telling you the same stories. That's what was unique about him as a leader, I think.
You made a rather interesting transition several years ago, going from your career as a journalist to a very public life as the First Lady of California when Arnold was elected governor. Did you talk to Tim at all about that transition and what you'd be facing when you moved so deeply into the world of politics?
I talked to him a lot about it. I talked to him when I took a leave of absence during the campaign. I talked to him afterwards. I talked to him when I was trying to figure out my relationship with NBC, and he was the one who finally said to me, look, you need to go. And this isn't going to work out.
I mean that in the best way, but you need to get out of here.
No, but I was trying to work it out, and he said, look, they need time. You need time. Go. And I respected his judgment, and I think that that's what you go to people like Tim for their judgment, their wisdom, and that you know that they'll tell you the truth.
I'm curious what this dynamic is like. I mean, Tim was known as one of the best political interviewers ever, and he was tough. So what was it like for you to watch your husband, the governor of California, appear on Meet the Press opposite Tim?
Well, I was comfortable knowing that he had prepared for Tim, because I told him before he came on here, you better prepare, because Tim isn't going to be nice to you because you're my friend. Tim isn't going to be nice to you because he knows you. Tim is tough. And I think people like Arnold, people like my uncle, Senator Kennedy, they all prepared for the best, and they came in prepared.
Did you ever call Tim before an Arnold appearance on Meet the Press and say,
Don't
just tell me a few of the questions you're going to ask?
You know, Tim would always call me and say, look, Arnold's not going to have any respect until he gets in the chair opposite me and handles me. And he would always call up checking on me and then try to book Arnold at the end of the conversation.
We were talking to Maureen yesterday and Luke at the wake for Tim, and both said that not only were they surprised by this massive outpouring of emotion for Tim, the people who've driven from South Dakota and Minnesota just to pay their respects yesterday, but that Tim would be surprised too. I'm just worried about your reaction to the response to his death.
Well, I was so pleased, actually, by the response. I drove over to the wake last night, and I think for me, I wanted to go there to really make sure it was real. And I was so touched that there were so many people in line, and the woman in front of me said she drove from Baltimore, and this was the only place she wanted to be at that time. She'd never met Tim. And I think it really is a teachable moment for all of us. I think people see that Tim was real, that he was a proud son, a proud parent, that he was an authentic human being, that he was a real journalist, that he was about the truth, he was about the country, he was about explaining things. And I think it tells us all a lot about what people respond to.
You talk about a proud parent. I had the chance to interview Luke on the air here a couple of days ago on our show, and I think how could you pay Tim a better compliment than to allow his son the chance to speak and show what and by the way, and Maureen, a great compliment to wonderful parents, but just looking at Luke and listening to him, such a great compliment to them as parents.
And I took that interview that you did and I showed it to my kids, because I think, this is every parent's dream, Luke Russert. Standing there poised, honors his parents, but his parents made him a priority. I think with Tim, when I was first pregnant and I had my first child, I was working here. Tim worked with me and NBC to try to make it possible that I could parent and also work, because parenting was a priority for him. And I thought it was so great, because you don't see a lot of men talking openly about how important fatherhood is to them, about running out from their job during the day to go meet their son when they come home from school. I didn't know any man who was doing that, and I always admired that about Tim Russert. He put fatherhood at the front of his agenda. He put, being a good citizen at the top of his agenda. He talked openly about his faith and about doing the right thing and being the kind of person that you could depend on. And I think that's really the lesson. When I close my eyes and think about Tim, I think about faith, I think about fatherhood, I think about America, I think, about Buffalo, I think about the pride in a town that, people used to make jokes about, and Tim sat here and said, I love this city. I love the people in it. I love my dad. I love my kid. I love my country. And people were like, wow, I want to be be that.
Yeah. Well, Maria, it's always nice to have you here. I wish you were here under better circumstances this time, but thanks for talking to us. I appreciate it. And by the way, MSNBC will have live coverage of the memorial for Tim Russert. That's today at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.